Good morning and welcome to your next installment of Miss Thompson's AutoCAD Inventor tutorials. Today we're going to work on extruding some parts for your crew capsule and then putting them together using the assembly tool. So we're going to start out obviously opening a new part, just like we've done in the past by clicking on the part tile or opening File, New, and then part in the under the file tab. Once we're into the part, as we've done in the past, we're going to start a new sketch. And in this case, you want to be very careful which axes or which plane you start your sketch on. And you want to make sure that you're utilizing the center point because it will be important later on as we try to put our pieces in an assembly. So for this first example, I'm going to start with a horizontal axis. And I'm going to essentially use the strategy of creating the several circles that represent the diameter of our crew capsule. So I'm just randomly using 3 inches as the diameter. And then I'm going to add another circle here, and I'm just going to make it 2.9 inches. And so what I've got is I've got about 1/10 of an inch difference between the inside circle and the outside circle. And that's representing the thickness of our gum tape surface. So if I now go to extrude, what I want to do is I don't want to extrude this big part in the middle. I want to extrude only the area between the two circles. So I'm representing just that thin layer of gum tape that we're making. So make sure that it's just that area between the two circles. Notice when I click on it, it starts to extrude. Now I'm going to extrude from the middle symmetrically to each side. And I'm just guessing that I'm going to make an 8-centimeter extrusion, or sorry, 8-inch extrusion. And of course, you're going to make your extrusion whatever the actual length and diameter of your crew capsule is. So as you can see now, I have a nice 3-inch diameter, 8-inch tall cylinder, but notice it is completely like see-through. I do not have anything on the bottom that would keep the eggs from falling out. So we got to fix that. If I put eggs in here, they're just going to fall right out the bottom. So in order to do that, what I'm going to need is I'm going to need another work plane down here that I can do a second extrusion from. So I click on work plane and I'm going to pick offset from plane, and I'm going to hover over where the edge of that extrusion is, and notice it shows you kind of a gray surface there. So that is going to be my work plane, and I don't actually want it offset, so I'm just going to click the green check mark here because I actually want it right on the edge of the bottom of the extrusion. So now you'll see I have my cylinder, and then at the very bottom of the cylinder, there's this square gray box that represents my work plane. Now, if I hover over the work plane, it should turn green, and then right click, I want to start a new sketch on that work plane. So notice when I clicked on new sketch, it went to my traditional sketch mode. Now, notice that behind my work plane, I can still see the extrusion. So that extrusion is still there, but it's not part of this work plane. So if I tried to extrude right now and said, oh, I want to extrude, from this point, it wouldn't actually let me do that because that circle there is not actually part of this particular sketch. So what I have to do is highlight that outermost circle, and I'm going to right click, and just like we did with our wings, we're going to project that geometry onto this sketch. So notice it's now yellow because I've incorporated it into this new sketch. So now when I click extrude over here, it allows me to extrude from that outermost circle. And make sure you're clicking on the outermost circle, otherwise you're going to have a weird cap that's too small. So I don't want this the second extrusion to be 8 more inches. I just want it thick enough to make the cap. And since I'm using 0.1 for the thickness of my walls, I'm going to also use 0.1 for the end cap. And if I click OK, notice now you can no longer see through the cylinder, and now I have this nice little cap down here on the bottom that will keep my eggs from falling out. So notice if I look over here at my model, I've got the first extrusion, which is the cylinder itself. Then I have my work plane, and then I have that second extrusion. And if you need to make changes, you can open up the sketches for each one of them and make edits. If you decide like it's too skinny or it's too fat and you need to adjust it, you can adjust those right there in that sketch part. All right, so before we move on, always save your work. So I'm going to save this as a cylinder. Right. And then, like I said, I'm going to show you another way of doing this as well. So this time I'm going to open a new part again. And I'm going to start a new sketch. But this time I'm going to use the vertical axes. And this is another way that you can do the same thing. So I'm still going to do a 3 centimeter wide, 3 inch wide, 8 inch tall crew capsule. So I'm going to start out with the line tool again at the middle. And this time I'm just going to go over 1.5 because I just want half of the diameter of my crew capsule. And then from that point, I'm going to go up my 8 inches. And I'm going to zoom out again. So notice I kind of have this like L shape where it's 1.5 inches over and 8 inches up. But I need, in order to extrude this, I'm going to need to make it a 2-dimensional area instead of just lines. So I'm going to go to the left 0.1, same thickness as I had before. And then I'm going to go back down. Now, if I want 0.1 thickness on the bottom as well, I'm going to go down 7.9. And then I'm going to go back over to the origin, which I've got a 0.1 thickness, so that's going to be 1.4. So basically all I've done is I've subtracted 0.1 from each thing, and then I've got to close my loop by going that last little 0.1 down to my original point. And I know I'm at my original point because notice it's green. Okay. So doing this can be a little tricky. Notice that I didn't stop my line at any point. I just kept making the lines over and over again so that I knew that they were still connected in the corners. There's a way to check and make sure that your lines are still what we would say closing a loop. And I'm going to get some of these extension dimension lines out of the way just so that we're looking just at the lines and not the dimension lines there. All right, so if I click on this outermost line. I'm going to right click. Notice you should be able to see close loop. So click on that closed loop and it's going to open this thing like continue selecting curves until you close the loop. So I'm going to go okay. I'm going to click the like little top part and it notices that it's got all these other connections. And then I need to connect this little piece here at the end. Okay, it's not seeing that I don't think I actually got that little piece at the end, which is why this is a good exercise. Oops. I'm going to put that last little line in here again because I apparently didn't actually put that in there last time. All right, so now we're going to try this again. We're going to close the loop. Okay. I'm going to click on this piece. Notice that all the rest of that highlights so that it's completely closed and it says the loop has been successfully closed. If you're trying to do revolution and it's not letting you, likelihood is that you haven't completely closed the loop. Now we need one more line because this time instead of doing an extrusion, we're going to use a revolution and it requires an axis to revolve around. So we're going to make a line that is basically on the y-axis, and you can make it longer than what your actual revolution is, but I'm just going to make it the exact same as what we already have here. So we've got our revolution axes now too. So that's this green line right here. So now when I go to 3D model, instead of clicking extrude, I'm going to choose revolve instead. And because I really only have one two-dimensional surface here to revolve, it actually highlights it blue and assumes that's the surface we're going to revolve. And then it wants an axis. So you click on the select axes. You'll know that you've got the select axes tool because you'll see the arrow with the plus sign. And then we want to click on this center axis. It's already set to go 360 degrees. And notice we now have, after we click OK, oops, what just happened? Okay, I don't know what that was. Must have hit something weird. Anyway, notice that we now have our cylinder and it also has a bottom on it. We did it all in one shot instead of having to use the added plane that we did in the other method. So go ahead and construct your cylinder now. Make sure that you have a top and a bottom if you're choosing to make them flat. If you're choosing to make a nose cone shape, then you're going to essentially follow the same kind of strategy. You can either add a plane to the top of the cylinder and then construct your nose cone, or you can make another part as I've done. So I made my nose cone in a separate piece that I called nose cone, using the same kind of strategy. So if I open up my sketch here, I essentially made a kind of a triangle, and then I used the revolution tool and revolved that triangle around, and so that's how I have this nose cone shape. So you want to make sure that you have your cylinder and whatever you want the top of your crew capsule done before moving on to the next video.